Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Today we're doing something pretty incredible. We're diving straight into the raw source data to see how ashwagandha, that ancient Ayurvedic staple, is actually holding its own under the incredibly strict microscope of modern oncology. We aren't looking at folklore today. We'll be relying entirely on published studies, clinical trials, and hard biochemical data to see exactly what this plant does once it gets inside the human body.
It's a pretty wild thing to think about, right? Can an ancient stress-relieving shrub literally help modern medicine fight cancer? A plant that's been used for thousands of years to promote general vitality is now being scrutinized by integrative oncologists. So let's look at the objective evidence and see if it actually holds up.
All right, here's our structural roadmap for today. We're going to start with the plant itself and its modern applications, then zoom way in to look at the cellular warfare and immune defense mechanisms. After that, we'll zoom back out to look at quality of life, how it pairs with conventional treatments, and finally, what the future holds.
So, jumping right into Part 1, Ancient Herb, Modern Oncology.
The entire foundation of this explainer really boils down to this one word, Withanolides. These are the naturally occurring bioactive compounds, specifically steroid lactones if you want to get technical, found right inside the root and leaves of the plant. Honestly, you can think of Withanolides as these highly targeted special ops agents. Scientists are practically obsessed with isolating these specific compounds to figure out exactly what they're capable of when they come face-to-face with malignant cells.
Which brings us right to Part 2, cellular warfare and the actual mechanisms at play.
When researchers look closely at Withanolides, and specifically one called Withaferin, as well as alkaloids, they see them actively disrupting the growth cycles of cancer cells. And they don't just do one thing, it's a multi-pronged attack. They arrest the cell cycle, meaning they literally stop the cancer cells from dividing. They inhibit metastasis, blocking the tumor from spreading, and they completely mess with the cell's oxidative stress levels. But the absolute showstopper here? Inducing apoptosis.
Now, you might be wondering what apoptosis actually is. In layman's terms, it's programmed cell death. It's essentially a cellular self-destruct button. In cancer cells, that button's broken or switched off, which is exactly why they multiply out of control. Well, the source data shows that Withaferin A actually helps wire that vital self-destruct sequence back up in tumor cells. It gets in there and activates mitochondrial pathways and a major tumor suppressor protein called p53.
And we're seeing this play out in both in vitro petri dishes and in vivo living models. The data shows that ashwagandha selectively targets tumors. It basically triggers a reactive oxygen species bomb, causing severe oxidative stress right inside the cancer cells while simultaneously shutting down inflammatory pathways, like the NF-kappa B pathway in the area around it. It is a highly targeted microscopic assault.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit for Part 3, boosting the immune defense. The sources detail some truly impressive immunostimulatory effects. Basically, ashwagandha acts like a massive amplifier for your innate immune system. It ramps up natural killer cells, which are our body's absolute first responders to malignancies. It enhances macrophage phagocytosis, which is just a fancy way of saying it helps our immune cells literally eat up cellular debris and pathogens. Plus, it regulates cytokine signaling and helps T cells stick around a lot longer to keep fighting the good fight.
And that T-cell persistence leads to a totally fascinating application. The medical literature specifically notes Withanolides have been found to synergistically enhance the response to chimeric antigen receptor or CAR T-cell therapy by improving T-cell persistence. Guys, CAR T-cell therapy is like the cutting edge of modern immunotherapy. The fact that researchers are looking at a traditional botanical to actually boost something this advanced, as well as PD-1 checkpoint inhibitors, that is a massive paradigm shift.
Now moving on to Part 4, let's look at the big picture, quality of life benefits.
44%. I really want that number to stick with you. In a double-blind, randomized controlled trial, the absolute gold standard of research, participants dealing with chronic stress took an ashwagandha extract for 60 days. And by the end of it, the active treatment group saw a massive 44% drop in their stress scores compared to the placebo group. Because it's an adaptogen, it essentially acts as a systemic shield against physical and mental stress. Those same randomized trials showed a 28% drop in cortisol, our main stress hormone. Meta-analyses also show it significantly improves sleep quality and fights off insomnia. And think about it. If a patient is going through a grueling oncological diagnosis, getting deep sleep and keeping cortisol low isn't just nice to have, it is absolutely vital for cellular recovery and resilience.
So how does it actually play with those grueling conventional treatments? That's Part 5, synergy with conventional treatments.
To answer that, we turn right to the Biswell clinical trial.
They took 100 breast cancer patients and compared standard chemotherapy on its own versus chemo paired with an ashwagandha extract. The difference was night and day. The group taking the adjunct experienced significantly less fatigue. They tolerated the harsh chemo drugs way better, and their overall quality of life scores were consistently higher across the board throughout their regimen.
Now, to be absolutely clear here, integrative oncologists view this strictly as a complementary adjunct therapy. It's a teammate, not a standalone cure. And while it generally has a very safe profile and is great at managing fatigue, the medical literature is super explicit about one thing. You cannot use ashwagandha if a patient is on immunosuppressive drugs, like those used after an organ transplant, because its immune-boosting effects are just too strong. So, as always, the source material stresses this must be coordinated with the physician.
Finally, Part 6, the future of ashwagandha.
The scientific community is incredibly optimistic for sure, but they're staying totally grounded about the clinical hurdles ahead. First off, we desperately need more large-scale, multi-center, randomized controlled trials before this sees any formal FDA approval. Researchers also have to figure out how to overcome the massive variability in plant extraction and dosing. But the really exciting stuff? That lies in integrating pharmacodynamics, tailoring treatments to a patient's specific DNA, and utilizing wild advancements in nanotechnology.
Because Withanolides can actually be pretty tough for the human body to absorb, scientists are getting creative. It is mind-blowing, really. They are combining this ancient medicinal shrub with modern nanocarriers, nanoemulsions, and even gold nanoparticles. They're literally binding these compounds to microscopic gold so they can bypass digestive breakdown and deliver the cancer-fighting elements directly into the tumor sites. Talk about an incredible upgrade in bioavailability.
Which leaves us with one pretty profound thought to wrap up on. How will the convergence of ancient botanical wisdom and targeted modern nanotechnology reshape the entire future of integrative medicine? We've journeyed all the way from microscopic cell death mechanisms to massive improvements in a chemo patient's daily life. The science is moving incredibly fast, and I, for one, absolutely cannot wait to see what clinical breakthroughs this fascinating plant brings us next. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep learning.